Trauma Therapist Podcast, episode 482. All right, guys, welcome to the Trauma Therapist Podcast. My name is Guy McPherson. My mission is to raise awareness of trauma and to support new trauma therapists just starting out on their trauma-informed journey. I do that through this podcast and my membership community, Trauma Therapist 2.0. If you're a therapist of any kind, interested in learning about trauma, and you're looking for support and inspiration, I invite you to check out Trauma Therapist 2.0 by going to traumatherapist2.com. That's traumatherapist, the number 2.com. All right, let's get started. All right, folks, first of all, thanks so much for listening. And I'm just super excited to announce that my new workshop is going to be starting up in about a week, podcasting for mental health professionals. If you're a therapist of any kind, if you're a coach, a counselor, licensed social worker, and you are ready to start your own podcast, my workshop is definitely for you. I'm going to take you behind the scenes, share with you what I've done, how I bring guests on, and we're going to go over, how to come up with your own name, how to come up with your own topics, how I decide upon topics, the different ways to monetize, how to secure guests, and how to market. If you're ready to do this, I'd love to help you with this. And you can head on over to mentalhealthpodcasters.com to learn more, get more information, mentalhealthpodcasters.com. All right, see you there. This episode is sponsored by Somatic Experiencing. Trauma may be a fact of life, but it doesn't have to be a life sentence. Somatic Experiencing is a psychobiological method of addressing clients' physical and emotional trauma conditions and helps to give voice to their experiences without a need for them to retell their story. SE focuses on regulation of the nervous system and offers the opportunity to engage, complete, and resolve the body's instinctual responses to traumatic experiences. For more information regarding somatic experiencing and the SE professional training program, the Trauma Therapist Podcast listeners can visit traumahealing.org/TTP. That's traumahealing.org/TTP. All right, guys, welcome back to the Trauma Therapist Podcast. Guy McPherson here, and I am very excited to have as my guest today, Tracy Morgan. Tracy, welcome.
Hi. Happy to be here.
Thank you. So Tracy is an occupational therapist with 15 years of experience practicing for the last 10 in early intervention and psychosis in the UK Midlands. Tracy's experienced fairly significant trauma herself. And now she works with young people experiencing first episode psychosis. And she found that after the neurological psychosis symptoms are in remission, she's left with residual trauma voices, quote unquote, with which she uses in the subsequent treatment, and we'll get to that. Now, Tracy, I'm really excited you're on because, early psychosis has been one of my interests and specializations, and
Yep.
actually, you're the first person that I've brought on specifically who focuses on that.
Oh.
And we know that there's a lot of correlation with trauma, but we'll dive into that anyway. So. Thank you again for being here. Share with our listeners where you're from and where you're calling from, and we'll dive in.
Right. Well, I'm based in the UK, obviously, and I'm in the Midlands, which is very close to Birmingham, sort of Nottingham, Leicester area. I'm sort of in Warwickshire, where Shakespeare's from. I'm originally from Scotland. That's why I've got a strange accent. But I've lived here for 27 years. Yes, 27
Awesome.
years. So,
Awesome.
Yes, that's where I'm at the moment.
So, given the fact that, I want to address this because it's front and center here. Given the fact that we're in the heart of COVID-19 that's going on here, how is that impacting you and your area?
It's absolutely. Mental health services have had to reconfigure everything that they're doing. I'm currently off sick from work, not because of COVID, for a whole other reason. But I was actually in a team meeting yesterday, and everything's been reconfigured, and it's been reconfigured on a daily basis. We're trying to minimize face-to-face treatment with people unless it's an absolute emergency. And, we're doing everything. We're being really let's use this sort of thing. Let's use Microsoft Teams. Let's use Skype. Let's use WhatsApp. And I'm thrilled about that because I've been trying to do it for the last 10 years. So we're getting more innovative as time goes on. My concern is that, first of all, I think we're going to reduce the feeling of illness of those who have had very severe anxiety, because the whole world suddenly is in the same boat. I don't know whether that's going to make us as a society more compassionate towards that. But unfortunately, I've got a lot of people saying to me, I'm so anxious, I'm relapsing, I'm becoming unwell. And it's like, no. You're the same. You're the same. This isn't illness. This is a worldwide feeling of, we don't know what's happening. We don't know what's going to happen. And that uncertainty makes everyone anxious. So it's a normalization of that. But obviously, this is going to be a massive, huge amount of trauma for everyone, because we're going to have loss.
Right. Yeah, that's a really good point about the mental health aspect globally, and what that's going to look like for those of us who have mental health challenges. It is an opportunity certainly for many people to be compassionate about those of us who are experiencing mental health challenges.
Absolutely.
So go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, the really interesting thing is that with staff, and I mean, at the moment, I've actually put on the UK healthcare Facebook page, I actually put out a call saying I'm currently away from my workplace because of another illness. If anybody needs to talk that's working in healthcare, that just needs to vent, I've actually put myself out there and people are contacting me, and it's just the most basic things that people were not very good at containing anxiety. And it's those little hints and tricks and things that we teach our patients how to manage their anxiety and their emotions. Suddenly it's like we're teaching everybody that, which is it's an amazing opportunity, but everybody kind of needs it at the same time. Yeah.
So how did you get into this topic of early psychosis?
I actually accidentally came into it because I was redeployed from inpatients. I was the occupational therapist at an inpatient unit. I was the only occupational therapist, and they were closing that unit down and functionalising, and they were basically centralising mental health inpatient beds. And I had choices of where I was being redeployed to. I was very, very blessed 10 years ago for that to have happened. And I chose, I didn't think I wanted to do it, but I chose to go and work in early intervention in psychosis. I thought I would hate it, but actually I'm still there, and it's 10 years later. And it's amazing how much you grow with the research, because it's very cutting edge. Even here, it's we're right on the edge of what's being discovered. So
let's kind of start with you kind of giving us giving our listeners a snapshot of what an occupational therapist is, because before I'd been working in a clinic for 5 years where we had a multidisciplinary team and there were occupational therapists. Before I got there, I didn't know what the heck they did, and really came to appreciate and value and really respect the not only the job you folks do, but how vital it is for that population of people who are experiencing those symptoms. So what does an occupational therapist do?
Right. I think the best way to do everything. Superheroes. No, we're not. I have been known to say in a team meeting when a consultant has said, Tracy, can you do this patient? I'll say, you do realise I'm not Jesus. I have said that. Not that it's one of those jokes that what I tend to do in the role that I have now is that I take a lead on vocation. I take a lead on getting people back to their workplace as quickly as possible, negotiating using employment law to make sure that they're going back to a supported environment, to actually make sure that their employers don't try and use constructive dismissal And we're getting great results from that. Most people are going back into the workplace, into their original workplaces, which is fantastic. Also, educational settings, making sure that, because our age range is between 14 and sort of 35 and to retirement age, but I tend to sort of stick with the working age. And to get them into education, make sure they're supported in further education, universities. And it's very much, what can we do to adapt the real environments that these people are working in? I use sensory approaches. I'm really big on sensory. Basically, putting sensory adaptations to a very normal environment. So I've had a young man who was behaving so bizarrely. He had first episode psychosis, and his behaviour was horrific. And Friday night, 5:05, he would be up in A&E because he knew I wasn't around to catch it. He'd get himself admitted to the hospitals. They would rapidly tranquilise him. They were constantly restraining him. And I remember one Monday morning after I'd been on a course in Cardiff on sensory integration, and I went, oh, he's seeking containment with deep pressure. So we basically put dark curtains in his rooms. We gave him he bought a heavy duvet, like an eiderdown, really heavy. We started getting him to wear boxing compression vests, that sports people wear. And he started to feel contained, and the deep pressure. It's things like that. It's finding those ways around a normal environment to make it easier to reduce anxiety and stress, and to make things easier so that people can do what they value and what they have to do to have quality of life.
And that is such a crucial element, really, for anyone. I mean, oftentimes when we're talking about trauma and PTSD in veterans, there's a lot of talk about getting them back, finding a purpose, right? Getting them back to what they've been doing. Because a lot of times with people who've been experiencing early psychosis, even first episode, there's a lot of shame, there's a lot of trauma, there's a lot of feelings of inadequacy, because oftentimes you're isolating yourself because you're so freaked out, you don't want to go out. And being able to get back, just as you're saying, being able to get back to work and to go to school is crucial. And you see the people like, oh my God, I'm back, I'm normal again,
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's phenomenal watching. And some people, it's a case of they started off with no occupational structure. So somebody who was in the room, they were a bit of a shut-in, they only played on their computer. And then it's like suddenly they're faced with someone like me, and it's like, what do you want to be? And they go, and then that's when I go back and I do a bit of digging around and find out where they were at before. What did you want to be? What are you into? What do you like doing? Why do you like computer games? Why do you like that kind of computer games? And then we start to build a picture, and then we find a hook, what I call a hook. And I find that hook. I mean, one of my young lads, we have care coordination in the UK, where you look after somebody and you look after everything. From social stuff to finances to education to work to family work, all of it. But I was called in by the care coordinator, and she said, I don't get him. I don't understand this lad. I don't get it. I don't get him. I just don't get it. And she says, she said, you're the geek whisperer. And I went, really? And I went out, and this young guy was into writing narratives and drawing. Now, where it ended up with a bit of work on his anxiety and his social anxiety, first of all, I took him to Forbidden Planet. I don't know if you have that in the States. It's a bit like a mecca of comic books and geek memorabilia. Basically, it's a comic book store. And I took him there and I said, I'm going to introduce you back to your people. This is your tribe. And he was like, the difference. And then I took him down to the college. We got him signed up, and he did a course for 3 years in computer games design, and he was looking at opening a business.
Oh my God.
That young man never relapsed, and he was considered, he's going to be on Clozaril. That's what they thought. This is it.
Right.
But
Look at
he
you.
didn't. So,
I can just tell, look, your warmth is exuding,
thank
seriously,
you.
out of there. And, one of my colleagues was very similar to you, just this really warm person who was able to connect with people. And a lot of times, like therapists, right? People who've like gone to school for therapy, there's a different way that they approach things. And I
Mhm.
myself fell into that trap.
Yes,
And you have that just natural warmth and ability to connect with people that is joyful. And
thank you.
just you're welcome. And just I can just hear the way and see the way you're talking about this particular guy. And it's like I can feel it. And it's like, right,
Yeah,
this was a guy who was going to be on these crazy drugs. And
yeah,
granted, they serve a purpose for
brilliant,
certain people, right?
fabulous.
But for not everyone, right?
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question. Do you currently are you working on a multidisciplinary team with psychologists and therapists, or you are? Okay.
Yeah. Our team now, we have CPNs, which is community psychiatric nurses. So that's nurses. So we've got nursing staff. We've got a social worker who's embedded within our team.
Okay.
We have myself, occupational therapist. There is another occupational therapist, but she's our deputy manager, and she doesn't. She's like, leave that to Tracy. Please leave that to Tracy. We also have support workers, and we have a CBTP therapist. That's cognitive behavioural therapist for psychosis.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a psychologist as well. I'm trying to think if we've got anybody else. And we have nurse prescribers. All of us, except the psychologists, all of us care coordinate. So we all have a role with a group of patients, 15 usually. I have a slightly reduced caseload because of other responsibilities. And we look after everything. So, but I tend to pick, it sounds awful, the ones with the highest occupational needs end up
Mm-hmm.
with me. And we swap them around a little bit if required. But yeah, you have a central worker, but then you can have an occupational therapist, you've got psychologists coming in, and we are very much bound by the NCAP in the UK. We have to make sure that somebody's offered Clozaril at the right time if they need it. We have to make sure they're offered cognitive behavioural therapy for psychosis within 3 years. And we've got a lot of standards in the UK that we have to abide by. And occupational therapy and vocational work is one of my responsibilities to make sure that
Okay.
everybody has that.
So you have a lot of experience under your belt. What would you say to the newer therapists out there who maybe aren't even familiar with this part? I mean, a lot of people aren't familiar with early psychosis. As you said, this is a cutting edge kind of specialization topic right now. We're learning more and more about it, but a lot of people aren't familiar with the early signs, the early symptoms. But what would you say to newer therapists that maybe you might be working with?
Okay, this is what I do say. This is what I say to our students and new staff. Don't be scared of the jargon. I've been working in this for 10 years. My manager, she's 11 years in psychosis early intervention. We have very, very well-oiled wheels of process. Do not think for a minute that you are going to know all of this in the first month. In fact, if I come into work and it's not a school day and I'm not learning something, it's time for me to retire. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like everything's a constant, you're constantly learning. And sometimes, especially with psychosis, and this is how I describe it to my students and new people. Just when you think you've got what psychosis is, and you go to grab it and think, I've got it, I understand, it disappears like smoke. It just goes. And
Mm-hmm.
it's because there is so much crossover between emotionally unstable or borderline personality disorder, depending on ICD-10 or DSM, There's also huge overlaps with histrionic. You've got loads of schizotypal. And you've got schizotypal is one of our at-risk mental states. If you've got a schizotypal diagnosis and then you get a drop in function, you will then come under our team because you're considered an at-risk mental state because you can go into full psychosis. But yet, and it's getting hold of all those things. And it's like, don't feel that you have to know everything about psychosis. Listen, learn. Don't be scared to say, what? What was that? It took me such a long time to work out the difference between positive and negative symptoms. And it's one of the most basic parts of it. And we've got ways of teaching that. So a positive symptom is things that are added. So positive addition, things that are added to normal experience. So voices, delusions, bizarre beliefs, tactile hallucinations generally. Whereas negative symptoms are things that are taken away or subtracted from our normal experience. So motivation, wanting to go out in the world, appetite, sex drive, all of that. And it's like working out. It's that very basic, but never as a new person coming into it, it's like, don't feel you have to know it all because you don't. You just need to believe that these people can get better, and they can. Yeah. I've got young people that I treated 7 years ago who have been married, had children, gone to university, done a master's degree, aren't on medication. They are living a full and wonderful life. And It's like, seriously.
It's exciting to see. Yeah, people do get better. And I would often tell my clients that and it's not going to be a straight line up. Oftentimes it's up, but if they came and they did the work and they were committed to the program and the groups, et cetera, most, if not all people, definitely got better. When I first started in that field, in that job, I was kind of fresh out of school, newly minted with my degree, and I felt like I needed to have all the answers, right? I felt that, therapy was going to do it. And I kind of needed the rug pulled out from under me and to really get what you're talking about and kind of what's emanating from you, which is this warmth and the power of, belonging and relationship. Talk a little bit about that and really your personal story getting that. Because when you got into this field, were you like this the way you are?
Yeah. Yeah. It was actually my husband, now ex-husband, who's an occupational therapist. He had not long qualified, and I was working in an OT department in physical medicine. And he sort of went, you have that thing. You have this thing. I had no idea what he was on about. I still, to a certain degree, don't. But he said, you need a rubber stamp. You need to go and get a qualification so that you rubber stamp what you can do for people, because nobody will let you do it otherwise. So I did. I did my psychology degree part-time while my babies were little. They're now in their 20s. And I did that. And then I did my occupational therapy degree because all I wanted to do was treat people. I just wanted to be a person that dealt with people with mental health problems. And that was the cheapest way for me to do it because I couldn't afford to do my PhD or my clinical doctorate. So that's what I did. And that's why I'm an occupational therapist. But yeah, I've always had that. And it's strange, actually, because a very, very close friend of mine actually said to me, I actually thought the way you are with people was because of your training. And he said, I don't think it is it? And I went, maybe not. He says, you've always been like that. And I was like, okay, maybe. Yep.
But it's really, Tracy, it's that quality that I think so many, not every, but a lot of therapists suppress, because they think that it's all the techniques and the interventions that are so vitally important that are going to do the trick. And yes, those have their value, but it's being able to, you can just see you're just so genuine and authentic, and being able to translate that when you're sitting in front of someone who potentially could be scary, who could be psychotic or experiencing certain symptoms, that's not easy to do, to be able to be present with someone who's experiencing those symptoms.
Yeah. At the end of the day, nobody really wants to hurt anyone. And I believe this in my absolute core. Fear is a response to anxiety, and anger is a response to fear. And if you're getting anger, it's because somebody's frightened. And if we can actually just engage a softer tone of voice, step back, give them space, and it's all that polyvagal stuff that we talk about, which is amazing. And I don't have all the terminology. I know I do it, but I'm like, I do that. Oh, that's clever. But it's amazing because that's neurological. And it's like, as long as you can sit with somebody and sit in, and this, it's one of the things that you actually ask on the list of questions. It's like a go-to quote. And I don't know where this quote came from, but it's like, sometimes when you're in the darkness, you don't want somebody to rescue you from the darkness. You just want somebody who's going to be okay to sit in it with you and to just hear you.
Wow.
And that's sometimes all we can do, because I can't make it better, but I can certainly sit there so they're not on their own. And then it's like, there's hope. Now that you're ready to listen, now that you can hear me, let's talk about the hope. Let's talk about other people that have come through this.
When you first started, did you get that?
I think so.
Okay.
It was probably...
So you're one of those people who got it right away.
I don't think I was as... Oh, it's difficult. I seem to go the other way. The other way, it's almost like sometimes I doubt myself now, because I don't have a master's degree in cognitive behavioural therapy, because I haven't got my master's degree in sensory integration. And it's like, I don't need them. I just need those tools. I need the tools and I need the understanding. And I need to know when I can and when I can't. That, I think, is the bit. It's knowing when and when not to do something. But generally, what I tend to do is, when I've got somebody in front of me, it seems so obvious. We have a community in the UK that are travellers, and they travel around, and they don't live in houses. They live in caravans and on sites, and they tend to get a very bad reputation, and they can be quite difficult to deal with. They have a very different culture. And a lot of them aren't educated. They don't read. They don't speak. They're pulled out of school when they're about 9. And we have quite a lot of these young people that become psychotic and very difficult to manage. And I've actually got one who's an OT client of mine. I don't care coordinate them. And I remember doing the OT assessment, and I went through, so what do you like doing? And what things do you do around the house? And what things do you do around the site? And I built a picture. And when I fed back to him, I said, he is so clever. He is so smart, so smart. He watches documentaries on Netflix, and he gets frustrated because when he wants to watch one that isn't in English, he has to put the subtitles up and he can't read them. So he's constantly waking his girlfriend up, who luckily can read a little. So basically, one of my main objectives when I go back to work, hopefully soon, will be that actually I can't get anybody to teach this lad to read. So I've actually found a whole load of resources, and I'm going to do it.
Wow.
Just little bits, and then teach his girlfriend how to teach him. And it's and you've gotten it in, because he's crazy smart. He's crazy smart. And it's like, all you're lacking is to be able to read.
Right.
Well,
look,
and
you are a breath of fresh air, man. You're just so your joy and your passion for this work is just so infectious, and I just love talking to you.
Thank you.
Sincerely. How about, as we wind down here, how about a go-to book recommendation, whether OT related or trauma related or early psychosis related or not?
Right. This is actually by a lady. I don't know if you'll have heard of her in the States, but I recommend anybody interested in trauma must read this woman. She's got a podcast. She is phenomenal.
Oh.
Her name is Carolyn Spring, and it's Carolyn Spring.
Okay.
And she has a couple of books. You can get them on Amazon. You can even get them as audiobooks. The first one that I read was called Unshame. And she's got several others. They'll come up on Amazon. And the other one is called Recovery is My Best Revenge. She is an absolute inspiration. And as she's from the UK, we don't have a lot. I mean, we've got you over there in the States, which is amazing. And I listen to you, and a lot of my colleagues are starting to too. But actually, to get somebody who's British,
right,
rare. Very, very rare. And she is amazing. She actually had a diagnosis of DID, dissociated identity disorder, secondary to lots and lots of abuse in childhood. And she has recovered. She has recovered, and she is a leading light in this country. And she is phenomenal. Very, very British, very, very matter of fact. I love it. I love her. She is really good. She has a podcast too. A lot of we have an agency here called Rosa, which is to do with rape and sexual assault. It's charity based, and they have an amazing program, and everything they do is based on her work.
Wow!
And to be honest, I'm quite jealous of being in the NHS, that their stuff is better than what we can do. Because we're so bound by all these. You must have this qualification and these letters after your name, and it's like, I've got the letters after my name. Can you just let me treat my patients, please? But yeah, it's phenomenal work. So she is amazing.
I'll definitely check her out. Well, look, I would love to have you back at some point. I just really love talking to you and love to have your energy infuse this podcast. So,
okay, no problem.
Tracy, awesome speaking to you, and thanks again for coming on here.
Thank you for letting me come on.
All right, take care.
You. Okay, bye.
Once again, thank you to Somatic Experiencing for sponsoring this podcast. Somatic Experiencing Trauma Institute is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to resolving trauma worldwide by providing professional training and education in somatic experiencing. It was founded by Dr. Peter Levine, author of the bestseller Waking the Tiger, who developed somatic experiencing based on explorations of how animals deal with threat, nervous system overwhelm, and traumatic experiences on a daily basis. Learn more about somatic experiencing and the SE Professional Training Program at traumahealing.org/TTP. That's traumahealing.org/TTP.